Welcome to the Immune Edit. I'm Dr. Doug Jones. If your immune system feels like the enemy, or you're just tired of not feeling like yourself, this space is for you. I'm so excited to talk to you today about 8 tips that you can use when you feel like you haven't been heard by your doctor. Have you ever felt that way? Have you ever felt like when you're going into your doc, you have all these concerns, you have these things, but you just haven't been heard or validated, and then you kind of walk away frustrated? Maybe some of you have been that way with me, hopefully not. But have you felt that way before? I actually have. When I was as a patient, I've kind of gone in and there were times where I didn't feel heard. I didn't feel validated. And then you walk away and you're frustrated and you think, what do I do? How do I communicate this and how do I talk to my doc? Let me give you some tips today. This may be helpful. So, number one, prepare. Be prepared for your visit. I have a saying, it's called the 6 Ps, where it says proper prior preparation prevents poor performance. So if you prepare ahead of time, maybe that visit's going to go better and you'll be heard. And what do I mean by prepare? What I mean is, if you have a list of like 8, 9, 10, 12 things that you want to talk about, narrow it down, get focused, narrow it to like the top 2 or 3 things. You may still have your other list, but prioritize it so that you have a focused 2, 3 things that you really want to hone in on that visit. And then make sure that that's clearly communicated and that you stay focused on those things, because the nature of healthcare is that it's really difficult for a doc to have the capacity to address 8, 10, 12 things. It just is. So first of all, if you're focused, you're prepared, you have those 2 or 3 things, stay on topic with that. That will go a long way. And your doc will be able to tell you're going to focus on those things. And then I think you may get them to respond a little bit better. Know what your timelines are, what your triggers are, patterns, severity, what's worked, what hasn't worked. And more than anything, like, know your medications, know your supplements, know exactly what they are, know the dose, know the names, know how often you're taking them, and be able to communicate that. And if you're not sure, take pictures. You've got your medications there, just take pictures of your medications or pull a list from the pharmacy of what prescriptions you filled and take that in so they have something concrete. If you go in with a specific list of those medications or pictures or anything that gives them those specifics, that tells them this person thought ahead of time, they're prepared, and I think they'll be a little more willing to listen, to take the time to understand, because it's so refreshing. It is so refreshing to me when people will come in, here's the list, here's what I'm taking, here's what I'm doing. It's like, wow, this is awesome. As opposed to that guy, yes, guys, you're the worst. That guy that says, well, my wife gave me like this pink square pill. I don't know what it is. Does that make sense? No, it doesn't. You know how many pink squared pills there are out there? It does nothing for us, and it just kind of wastes time. So don't be vague. Don't go in unprepared. Like, know your stuff. And that just goes a long way. And then that helps with point number 2, using clear, assertive communication. So when you're going in say, I feel like this concern hasn't been addressed yet, or can we revisit this? Or I'm worried about blank because of blank, or I need more information to feel comfortable with that plan. Just be clear. Don't be threatening. Just very clear, concise, assertive, but just kind of stating what you need in a calm, professional, way. That goes a long way for your doc. The third point that I'll say is frame the conversation around your goals. So, getting back to point number one of being prepared, of listing those two, three things that you're focused on, focus on your goals so that you want to share what your health goals are. Not only the two or three problems that you're there to be seen for, but what are also your goals? What do you want to accomplish? Where do you want to go and where do you want to be with this? And help them understand what those priorities are. Number four would be, if there's something you don't understand, whether it's something about your disease, the tests that are being run, the medications being prescribed, the line of thinking behind something, just ask clarifying questions. Maybe ask, what else could this be? Why do you think this isn't something to worry about? Why aren't those abnormal labs something to worry about? Can you explain the reasoning behind your recommendations? Those are okay things to ask. Get clarification, because when you're asking those in a non threatening way and you're just seeking their opinion, that's great. That's what they're there for. They're there to give you some of that guidance and to help clarify. Um, Along the way, number five, if you don't feel heard, signal that to them. Signal that you don't feel heard. And if you feel like you're being dismissed or they're interrupting, then just say, hey, I feel like my concerns aren't being fully understood. Can we take a moment to just focus on this for a minute? Again, non threatening, just can we pause? Can we take a minute to just focus on this? I'm not really feeling heard right now. And then maybe the doc will even ask you some clarifying questions like, okay, well, how aren't you being heard? Why do you feel like you're not being heard? What hasn't been addressed? And that, what it does is it just opens the dialogue between the two of you to where you're able to clarify, you're able to say you're not feeling heard, and then perhaps they start asking you questions so that they can understand a little bit better. Because a lot of this is just miscommunication, or sometimes if you're not organized and you start going on tangents, that's difficult because they're trying to follow, what's going on, but they still have to do it within certain confines. Number six, it may be helpful to bring a support person. So a family member, a friend, somebody there as your support that can, as you're explaining things, maybe they can fill in some gaps, because as you're trying to stay focused and as you're trying to say things or ask some clarifying questions or being direct, like, it can be difficult, and that can be anxiety provoking for you, because a lot of times this isn't your fault. You're in this situation, and sometimes it's difficult and there's pressure and you feel that anxiety. You don't know quite what to say and you're trying, but sometimes having that support person to just prompt or nudge, fill in some gaps, help to kind of understand, because maybe you're hearing something a certain way, or maybe the doc's hearing something a certain way, and there's a disconnect. Maybe having that support person there can help make that connection. They can be an objective person to just say, this is where the disconnect's happening. Or, you know what, you need to, sometimes when people are telling their story, they don't tell it all. And that support person say, hey, bring up this or talk about that, because those are the things that you're going to be talking to them about behind the scenes and at home when there's not that pressure situation. So having that support person can be a really nice addition to the visit. Number seven, feel free to request a second opinion. Um, I know as a doc, I never have any kind of issue if somebody wants a second opinion. In fact, sometimes, even if I'm feeling that disconnect with the patient, I'll even say, you know what? Why don't we get a second opinion on this? Why don't we have another set of eyes and another set of ears kind of listening in on this situation? Uh, because that can often be helpful. Sometimes people have certain hesitations or anxieties about requesting a second opinion. I think it's okay. Ask to be referred to a specialist if you need to. Get a second opinion, transfer care. It's okay to have those conversations because even the best of the best, sometimes, even in best circumstances, that chemistry or that dynamic just isn't there. And ultimately, at the end of the day, like you want the care of the patient. Docs want the care of the patient, and that's okay to get a second set of eyes on it. And lastly, I would say number 8, just know your rights and stand up and advocate for yourself. Patients have a right to be treated with respect. Docs have a right to be treated with respect too. It really is kind of a two-way street where you want to have that mutual respect. You each, you know your rights, um, make informed choices and decisions. Um, Take time to make those decisions. I'll tell a quick story. Years ago, I was a medical student and I was on one of my pediatric cardiology rotations, and I was really stressed out because we had some difficult conversations with some parents, and those little babies just really stressed me out because I didn't want anything bad to happen to any of them. Um, and it was really anxiety provoking to me. And I remember I was talking, it was on rounds on a weekend one morning, and I was talking to the pediatric cardiologist, and I said, "How does this not stress you out?" And he said something that I live by to this day. And he said, "If vital signs are stable, then you have time to think. If vital signs are not stable, then you follow an algorithm until you get them stable." And what that means is when you're going through your medical journey, if vital signs are stable, what that means is you don't have to be pressured into a decision. The doc doesn't have to be pressured into decisions. The patient doesn't have to be pressured. You can take some time to thoroughly look at it, to explore it, to get those second opinions, to get those clarifying questions, to have a good conversation where you're understanding, you're having that assertive communication, um, and you can truly make informed decisions. You don't have to feel that pressure. I know sometimes you feel the weight of the world on you because you don't feel good and you just want to feel better. And like, I get that. And you want to just offload that burden as soon as you can. But sometimes just taking a step back, thinking through it, going through it, then you can make a better, more informed decision. You're not jumping into the next fad. You're not jumping into that, wellness influencer that's selling you the next one off, one hit wonder product or their proprietary blend of whatever that just kind of delays ultimately you getting the answers that you want. Think, take the time, get the informed decision, take that time to communicate with your doctor. It's okay. Ask those questions, even if it takes 2, 3, 4 visits. In the long run, I think it'll pay off. And in the long run, I think you'll get from point A to point B quicker by just going through that process. If vital signs aren't stable, meaning you're really, really in that bind, then you have to take some action and you have to follow some things where it takes a different direction. But ultimately, when you follow those algorithms, when vital signs aren't stable, ultimately what you're doing is you're just getting it to a point where you are stable and then you can make those informed decisions. So that was just a lesson that I took years and years ago. And still to this day, even if it's a decision on just life in general, whether it's, you know, looking at a car or a house or doing different decisions. It's like if vital signs are stable, you have time to think and you have time to make those informed decisions. You don't have to feel the pressure that social media tells you you have to feel. Um, and just realize, this isn't your fault. You're not alone. There's resources. And if anything, I just want these 8 tips to help you better be prepared when you walk in, because when you're better prepared, you'll prevent that poor performance, and you'll be able to enhance that communication because your doc will sense you're prepared. And that makes a difference because then they feel respected, and then that respect is kind of that two-way street. So that's the immune edit for this week. 8 tips that if you're not feeling heard, maybe these are some ideas that you can implement, some edits that you can make on your next visit with your doc, and let's see if you feel heard, and let's see if they're able to validate your concerns and you're able to communicate better with them. Until next time, we'll see you. Thank you so much again for tuning in. We'll see you next time on The Immune Edit. This show is separate from my clinical practice at Global Allergy Immune Network. This show represents my opinions and my guests' opinions. Neither myself nor the show endorses the views or statements of my guests. This show is for educational purposes only and is not a substitute for professional care by a doctor or other qualified medical professional. This show is provided with the understanding that it does not constitute medical or other professional advice or services. If you're looking for help in your journey, please seek out a qualified medical practitioner. It's important to have someone in your corner who is a trained and licensed healthcare practitioner who can help you make changes, especially when it comes to your health.